Hello and welcome. I'm Jason White. This is Jason's Weird Reads. And today I'm going to help you fill up your reading goal for the year with 10 horror novellas that you can check out if you haven't heard of any of them. I love reading horror novellas. I think that horror in shorter form is often the best. Of course, talking about horror in longer forms like what Stephen King will typically write is fine too. I mean, you get a lot more character depth, you get a lot more story plots, like subplots and whatnot. But I find that the horror in real life that happens, unless it's a lifetime of horror, tends to come in like short instances, and that's why I think that the horror novella is a really cool, and short stories are really cool examples of what real life horror can be, even if you have supernatural elements or monsters, because those supernatural elements and monsters typically mean something else. But I'm getting ahead of myself here. Let's get into the list here. 10 horror novellas that you can use to fatten up your 2023 reading goal. Let's go. First up, I have a book that I have talked about recently with Daniel Braum, the author, and that is The Serpent's Shadow. Now, this book is a lot of fun. I read it a few years ago, and I want to read it again. Serpent's Shadow is about a family, a mother and a father, although they're not in it too much, and the brother and the sister, they are the stars of the story. They go to Cancun for a vacation, and what they find is a Mayan ruin that they're not supposed to go to. It's off limits to the public, but they go there anyway, and some supernaturally terrible things ensue. One thing I really enjoyed about this story was I kind of identified with the main character, the male character, because he falls for one of the girls that's there pretty quickly, and that's kind of the kid that I was when I was 14 or 15 years old, and staying somewhere. I would see this woman or young woman about my age, and feelings would come. And so it wasn't just that, though. The horror in this is a lot of fun. It's a very supernatural story. It's very weird, and it's written by one of my favorite authors, Daniel Braum. So definitely give that a try. Next up, I have Transmuted by Eve Harms. This was my first Eve Harms book, and it won't be my last. This book is, I've called it bonkers and batshit crazy before, but it starts off normally enough. It's about a young trans woman who's going through the transformation, and she wants to look more feminine, so she takes on an experimental procedure that's supposed to make her look more feminine, and it goes very weird. This is it's more than just weird. It's like the doctor's practice that she's led to. I should say doctor in quotation marks, because really it's like a mad scientist. This, like I said, the book starts off normally enough, but it goes into some very strange territory at the end, and I loved it for both parts. But I really enjoyed the craziness at the end. It was just like, I was reading and I'm like, what the hell am I reading? This is crazy. But it was like the best possible way to say that. So Transmuted by Eve Harms. Number 3 here, I have Gray Matter by Marcus Hawk. This book really deals with intrusive thoughts. The story is so if you have intrusive thoughts or suicidal ideation, anything that can be triggering in that way, you might want to avoid this book. This book goes into some very dark territory. It's about a young man who decides to open up a video rental store, like Blockbuster. Remember those? So he's doing it in this age where these stores have basically gone extinct, and but he's got like an angle. It's like 80s and 90s nostalgia, and he doesn't just sell movies. He sells like things that go along with it, things that you would have found back then, but mostly it's movies. And we start with him at the very beginning of this journey. It's like opening day, and it's easy to say that his envisions, or what he envisioned for this video store, isn't going as planned, and it leads him into some very dark territory. I recommend this because it's bleak, but it's also very a fast read, and I just fell in love with it. So definitely go check out Grey Noise by Marcus Hawk. Next up, I have The Bloody Tracks of Bigfoot by David Irons. This one comes in at about 180 pages, I believe, and this is kind of what sparked my idea to begin the cryptid readathon. Because once I was done it, I was like, I don't think there's ever been like a cryptid readathon, and I want to read more cryptid books. So I thought about it for a little while, and then I decided to reach out to Sin, who's really into, like, she's into cryptids way more than I am, and I thought she'd be the perfect person to help me out. And then I talked to Crystal, and we made it a thing. So getting back to the book here, this is a story about a film crew who want to finish making their movie. So they rented out this construction site, like way out in the boonies, and they got the permits for it. And so, or do they? So they want to go there to shoot it, and basically there's like just a few scenes left to shoot. They want to explode a van, and they have like a couple kill scenes, and while there they get attacked by this family of Bigfoot, and I'm going to leave it at that. This book is very gory at parts. You could call it like a splatterpunk book. I mean, the first kill in this book, I was just like, oh my god. It's like, oh my god. It was harrowing. It's just nasty, but that's what you're going to get in Bigfoot books. Bigfoot horror books, I should say. But it's a lot of fun. I can't recommend this one enough, as with all these books. I'm going to say that a lot. I say that all the time. Expect me to say I can't recommend it enough. Alright, so that's The Bloody Tracks of Bigfoot by David Irons. It is incredibly fun. So, next up I have 2B by Mark Allen Gunnels. I also talked to Mark Allen Gunnels about a year and a half ago about this book. Maybe even 2 years ago, I can't remember. This book is, it's very dark, and it's not always the easiest of reads. It's about a young couple, two men, who maybe are a little too involved with each other, and one, I believe it happens in like the very first chapter, and it's very hard to read. One unalives himself right in front of the other, or first he tries to kill the other one, and then he unalives himself. And so the survivor wakes up in the hospital with this awful memory, and he goes back after his hospital stay to live in that apartment where that happened, and he finds that it's now haunted. Like I said, this book is pretty hard to read in points, and there's some surprises along the way. It's one of Mark Allen Gunnels' bests, I think, so far. He's a really great writer. I love him, and so for me to say that, I think more people should be reading this book. It's very short too, so you can really pack it in. It's a fast read. Like, you get involved with this book, and you just want to keep knowing what's going to happen next. Alright, next up I have The Girl in the Video by Michael David Wilson. I read this a few years ago, and it's about a man who starts receiving these odd video, I believe it's over Instagram. He gets these video messages of this woman doing weird things, and as he sort of investigates what's going on, he realizes that this is a person who's out to get him. This book is terrifying because of how it could actually happen. If I remember correctly, there's no supernatural stuff, but there might be a little bit. It's mostly a stalking book, and it's terrifying for that reason. I really enjoyed reading this book, and it flew by so quickly. I think Michael David Wilson reached out to me and asked if I would read a copy and review it, and I did so, and like I said, it was a very fast read, and in the end, I absolutely adored this book. I can't recommend it enough. I want to read more Michael David Wilson. He released I believe, a haunted house story recently, and I want to go check that out. Next up, I have The Reyes Incident by Brianna Morgan. Now, speaking of the Cryptid Readathon, I read this for the Cryptid Readathon, and this is this book goes into some nasty territory too. It's about a group of young kids who are stuck in this bunker that has like water in it, and inside this bunker that's in the water, there are these mermaids, and they are not friendly mermaids. And so the story starts off with the main character she is at the police station, and she's giving her report, or not her report, she's telling the police what she saw and why the other kids are all missing, and why she's the only one seemingly left alive. And the story she tells is awful, and I really like the end of this book as well. Can't recommend this one enough. The Reyes Incident by Brianna Morgan was a knockout. Definitely check it out. Next up, I have The Har by David Sodergran. This is another one. I think I read most of these this year, actually, but I read this one earlier this year, and this one is the longest one on this list. It comes in at 206 pages. I still consider it a novella, or at very least a very short novel, but it flies by very quickly. I remember reading it very, very quickly. It's about an old woman who lives in this Scottish small town that's slowly but surely being taken over by large corporation who want to turn it into a golf course. And they're trying to buy out the property of everyone who lives in the area of which they want to build this golf course. And there's a few people, like our main character, who refuse to do this. They lived there all their lives. They're in their old age. Their spouses died in this place. They don't want to go somewhere else. They want to stay here, and they want to die here. And that's the premise of the story. The main character finds something on the beach while she's being terrorized by these people, and it starts to help her out. I mean, this is a creature feature, and it's going to go in some areas that you're not expecting. I love this book, and I want to read more by David Sodergran. I'm going to make that happen in 2024. But definitely check out The Har. It was my first David Sodergran. I don't know if I mentioned that, but it definitely will not be my last. Next up, I have The Talis Site by Rebecca Campbell. This book is really good. I remember it disappointed, and I'm going to tell you my disappointment in it so you don't go into it thinking that it's going to be a harrowing war story, because it's not really. It's more about what happens in the science lab. But it's about a woman who's basically Frankenstein, the mad scientist. And there's more than just her. Like, it takes place in World War I, and both sides have these things they call the Talis Sites, and they're these creatures stitched up from dead soldiers. So you have like a mega soldier. It's like 10 feet tall and made full of like dead soldier parts, and they're sent into no man's land to, wreak all the havoc they can. They're sort of like the invention of the tank, in a sense, because the tank was invented in World War I, and it wreaked havoc. But I believe tanks are actually mentioned in this. But like I said, don't expect too much action in no man's land. This story primarily takes place in the science lab, where these creatures are being developed, but it's still a fantastic read. I adored this book, and it's weirdness. I mean, it's a very weird book. And, it's like, you gotta, like, I don't know how the author Rebecca Campbell came up with this story, but I would really like to know, because it's interesting, just the whole premise. And I love the story. It's very quick, and I read it very quickly. I read it for the first week of Weird, as I did with this next book, which is Helpmeet by Nabin Ruthnam. Now, this book is a body horror story. It also goes into weird fiction, where the main character is suffering this unknown. It takes place in like 1900, I believe. So it's like 1900, 1901. It's a very long time ago. So medicine has not evolved to where we have it today. And our main character, his body is literally falling apart. His nose is falling off. I believe he's lost his fingers. He's losing his eyes, and the doctors can't figure out what's wrong. And so he wants to go back to his home to die, because he knows he's going to die. And when his wife takes him back to his home, all these secrets come out, and you figure out exactly what's going on with his body. And it is one of the weirdest body horror stories I have ever read. And if that sounds like something you would enjoy, I'm certain you will love this book. Not only is it weird and horrifying, it's also a very quick read, and I ate it up like very quickly. I think it was just a couple of sittings. So there you go. There's my top 10 horror novellas that you can use to fatten up your reading goals for 2023. If you enjoyed what you saw here, please leave me a stack of books down there in the darkness, and I'll leave you some books in return. Keep being weird, my friends, and keep being creative, and I'll catch you guys in the next bookish video.